Reform UK leader Nigel Farage has launched a scathing fight back against polling companies that he feels are suppressing his party. After Farage claimed that various polling groups didn't prompt for reform in their research during an interview with Laura Koonsberg, opinion executive Callum Weir, it's a polling company, hit back claiming that this was categorically not true. So then Nigel Farage responded, "Hi Callum, you have just admitted to the world that you prompt Reform UK under the other section, which means that you suppress the vote in your polling. Do you really want a fight over this?" And then he doubled down in a press conference yesterday.
I have written to Professor Green, the head of the British Polling Council, and I very much hope that the polling industry becomes honest. Otherwise, I'll have a fight with them. Like I had a fight with the banks last year. I can't wait. It's up to them. It really, really is.
Just for clarity, that is not Professor Green the rapper. But on Sunday, Farage wrote to the British Polling Council to demand that they ensure greater transparency. His demands were met just 24 hours later. So the Polling Council confirmed that they had, quote, written to all our members, reminding them of the importance of making their question, wording, prompt and sequence clear. So, look, are polling companies, and have they been, suppressing or hiding support for reform? Well, I welcome to the fray now UK Research Manager for More in Common, which is a polling company, Ed Hodgson. Ed, look, thank you very much. Can you explain what's going on here? Because, you know, look, you've got the traditional parties, haven't you? You've got your Labour, you've got the Tories, you've got the Lib Dems, and I can completely understand that you would obviously have them, you know, in lights when it comes to who you're going to vote for. But Reform are polling, depending on what you look at, around 15%, maybe even a bit higher in some of them. Should they not be in that same bracket as well? You shouldn't have to go looking for them, should you?
Yeah, I think it's worth saying there are a range of views here with different pollsters. So many pollsters, including More in Common, the polling agency I work for, do include Reform UK in that main list of parties. We choose not to include other lists. So Workers' Party, for example, comes behind the other option, simply because they're not polling high enough nationally to be included in that list. But pollsters set different thresholds, and there are good reasons for that. So Opinion, who we saw earlier in that tweet, don't put Reform UK in that initial list of parties. One reason for that is because with smaller parties, most people don't vote for smaller parties. So if you're a pollster, you want to make sure that if people say they're going to vote for a smaller party, they actually mean it and they're actually looking out for it. Because otherwise you might end up with people who, for example, might not have heard of Reform UK before and just like the word reform when they see it in a poll option.
I think, though, so when you look at some of the other parties that Reform were lumped in with, you've got some kind of obscure trade union parties that, you know, apart from the people who may be in that party, people have never heard of. And I do wonder whether or not that is skewing the amount of people who might go and say that they're going to vote for Reform, though. I mean, is that not a mistake on the polling company's part?
I don't think it's likely to be having a massive impact, if I'm honest. So last week, we actually, as it happens, had a poll out at the same time as Opinion. We have Reform in our full initial list. Opinion puts it in the second list. Opinion had Reform vote 1 point higher than us. So even if you are putting Reform behind a sort of a barrier, it seems that the Reform voters know to click through and select it anyway.
I suppose one of the things it comes down to, really, Ed, is whether or not you think there might be a left-wing bias in the polling industry. Do you think there might be?
I don't think it makes sense to think that pollsters sort of have a view on which party they want to win, sort of professionally speaking. Actually, if you're a pollster, you get one chance every 5 years to prove how good you are at predicting elections, and you don't want to be wrong. So you want to be as right as possible. There's no sort of skin in the game for underestimating a party if you're going to be wrong on it.
OK. Is there any evidence at all to suggest that if you have someone who's not in those main kind of brackets of the traditional parties or something like that, and you have to go looking for them, that actually people don't go looking for them? I mean, is there actually any evidence whatsoever to suggest that, you know, hiding Reform somewhere along with the monster raving Looney Party and whoever else would actually have an impact on whether or not people say that they're going to vote for them?
As I say, it doesn't look from the polling we've seen, just comparing pollsters that do prompt for Reform initially and those that don't. There's a massive difference. There have been polling errors in the past on this sort of thing. So historically, by putting UKIP, for example, in that initial list of options, too many people have said that they'll vote for UKIP and actually end up voting for them in a general election. Similarly, in these local elections recently, some of the mayoral election misses were from not having independent candidates named in the first list of options, and actually lots of people voting for some of these independent candidates.
Because I do wonder whether or not some of the pollsters, not hiding reform, but you get what I mean, putting them in the other box there, actually fundamentally misjudge the mood of the nation. Whether they misjudge the fact that most people now, I think, do know who reform are and what they're about, and whether that actually was maybe some pollsters maybe being a bit out of touch.
It's tricky to say. I would say pollsters, sort of by definition, are more in touch with the mood of the nation than many people, given they're speaking to thousands of people every single week. When it comes to reform specifically, if anything, the polls are being too generous to reform at the moment. If you compare reform's recent performances in by-elections and local elections, they've actually done quite a lot worse than they have been doing in the polling. So I think pollsters generally are actually more worried that their reform vote share is too high.
Well, it's interesting, and because another way of looking at it for Nigel Farage might be, actually, it's better for the polls to have you a bit low, and then maybe after the election, if you are lucky, you can say you've outperformed the polls, can't you? As opposed to everyone predicting before the election that 20% of the public are going to vote for you, and then it may be coming in slightly less. But look, thank you very much for clearing some of that up anyway, and Nigel Farage is obviously willing to take this fight to, I think, whoever wants it in any pub car park that will have it. So thank you very, very much. That is the research manager for More in Common, Ed Hodgson. In a statement provided to GBNews, Savanta, the polling company, has said that we are an independent and well-established polling company that purely seeks to accurately measure public opinion, not promote or suppress one party over another. And any implication otherwise is entirely false. We are confident in our figures as they stand. We won't be bullied into making methodological changes by politicians simply because they don't like our results. They continue. We were the most accurate polling company for the latest London and West Midlands mayoral elections, with an average error across both of 0 percentage points when it came to Reform UK's performance. Unsurprisingly, polling company Opinion have also been onto us. They said every methodological, easy for me to say, decision Opinion makes is designed to ensure the headline voting intention numbers are an accurate estimates of public opinion at the time of the poll. This has been demonstrated in Opinion's strong track record in elections, which includes their final poll of the 2019 general election, which was the most accurate of that campaign. All information about how Opinion conducts its polls and the methodological rationale behind them is publicly available, and you can find it on their website.